WOJNAROWICZ. I was familiar with his work, but not as a deep. I think your documentary brings us really inside of who he was, and also the art that he brought. Do you think his childhood determined who he became as an adult? And at what, how much?
I mean, I certainly think that was a part of it. I would hesitate to guess how much of that impact, how that determined who he became. We don't talk we don't talk a great deal about his childhood in the film, only because David, in the recordings that I had access to, did not really dwell on that. So I was kind of apprehensive of, kind of guessing it just what that impact may have been. Now, certainly it was a difficult childhood, and with abuse from his father and such, and growing up in Hell's
And
Kitchen.
then he was abandoned, and he was 16 in the street, or 17, right?
Yeah, exactly. He ran away from home quite a bit while living at Hell's Kitchen with his mother and his brother and sister. And so he ended up hustling on the street. And all of that certainly became very informative, I think, as time went on into his art and sort of his sort of life view as well.
And also, I think it's important to know to understand where he was before, throughout his life. And unfortunately, he left us very young at 37. And at the time, I think there was no respect for people with AIDS. It was a stigma. Do you think that his art reflects a little of that social situation?
Certainly, David put a lot of his own life in his work, and he also used his work as a means of resistance to call out sort of the problems that he saw in the world around him. And as the AIDS crisis wore on, as it affected his own life and took friends of his, that certainly became a major focus of his art, and something to shed a light on through his work.
So, Chris, in your opinion, what makes him an important contemporary artist?
I think the way that David used his work, he used his art as a means of figuring out his way in the world, his place in life. And at the same time, it was important for him to use his art as a means of resistance. And I think now more than ever, that's, incredibly important. Anytime we can sort of, use our work to call out injustices and sort of put, hold sort of truth to power in this society is really important.
Why did you dedicate your passion and energy to bring out this documentary? I'm sure you did it was a big effort because it's very well documented, and that takes time and passion and many things. So what was the drive?
It was all from David, being able to listen to his audio tapes and really sort of 25 years after his death, get to know him as a person through what he shared and left behind became really important to me. And I think he's a hero, he's a queer hero. And I think he's somebody that, people should really get to know his work. And I think he's somebody to emulate in the way that he really sort of always challenged himself to make his work mean something more.
When I was watching the documentary, in some situations, I felt like totally protecting him from the outside world. So I sometimes for me he was very fragile, but also very strong. So I don't know. It brought something in me. I don't know if could you talk about the impact that he could have in people when they see the movie? Like he had an impact in me. I mean, the movie had a. Yeah. Well, it's a complex person. It's a complex.
Yeah, no, certainly, and that's very that's very lovely of you to say, and it's interesting.
No, but it's true. I really wanted to go there and mother him.
Well, I think that David had that relationship with a lot of people in his life. Certainly, he had issues with the gallery system in the art world, but a lot of times I think these gallery owners, while he disliked the capitalism of it all, these people protected him and they became very close to him. Folks like Gracie Mansion and Wendy Olsoff and Penny Pinkleton, who ran PPOW, which was his last gallery. Like they all, I think they felt a sort of similar mothering quality. There were times Gracie even mentions in the film, where she really wanted to kind of protect him from forces. Certainly when he told her that he was HIV positive, that was something that, she initially thought for his own well-being might be best kept secret. And of course, that was not what David wanted.
But I think that talking about heroes or people that you can admire, I think that he's a contemporary hero. It doesn't have to be an LGBT hero. It can be a heroic human being. That's how I see him. Yeah. If he's LGBT, that's cool with me too, but
Yeah, no, certainly. I that's great to hear. And I think it's very true. It's, in being able to share David's journey in the way that he recorded it himself, you really hear somebody trying to find their way in the world and figuring out how they're going to make an impact. And that is, I think, universal. And it's not just about being queer or on the fringes. That certainly was part of his, his upbringing and his life. But he is, I think, does break those boundaries.
Also, Chris, I think that his art produces pain, but also happiness. It's because it's violent, but at the same time, you understand why is it violence, because the outside world is even more violent. And you have to respond to it with something. Like there's some pieces of art that are very challenging, but at the same time, incredibly realistic, I think. I don't know if I'm a little out there, but maybe I'm a little crazy.
No, I think you're 100% right. You don't seem crazy at all. I think that is important. And it does when the world around us is so crazy. And David says in the film, it's like, they were attacking him for things he was saying about politicians, and he's like, well, the things they're doing on a daily basis are causing so much harm to the population. In that instance, he was talking about young gay youth, but I mean, it's across the board, whether we're talking about the Black population or, whatever it would be. Women, it's, David talking about the one tribe nation was exactly about white supremacy, and how, his idea of the pre-invented existence was really about how, the system, the restraints are baked into the system. The entire system and government is put together in a way to like perpetuate that supremacy. And I think he was way ahead of his time in that way. I mean, of course, that was all going on at the time, but for someone in David's situation to be calling that out, I think was unique.
Okay, do you think that popular culture reflects who we are, or we try to be what we see on TV and films or documentaries?
Oh, I think it's probably both. I think in some ways it starts off trying to be a representation of what life is, in some ways. And then, of course, it inevitably sort of feeds into what we think we are supposed to be doing in life at the same time. So I think it's just this unending circle.
Okay, do you think that Hollywood as an industry, it doesn't matter if you're an independent or a big studio, do you think Hollywood is working on creating a world in which diversity, in which we won't have to use the word diversity because we're all there? Or
I mean, in fits and starts, I mean, I think that does exist. It's certainly not enough. It's a long way before it'll make, I think, the kind of impact and the huge kind of difference that it needs to. I don't know if I could say the industry as a whole has done a great job, but there's certainly, I think anytime anybody who has been underrepresented, their stories, whether it's women or Asians or, Black people or queer, whatever it is, anytime they can sort of tell their own story and get stories out there and stories that they want to tell, that does start to make a difference. Not just in the industry, but, people at home watching it and audiences and being able to see themselves in media.
So Chris, I want to ask you another question, because we're doing something, it's a bit superficial, but no, we're doing a special on the Oscars. And I was wondering if you're familiar with any of the films and if you care about the Oscars, including the question, if you want to answer.
This, because of the last year and the lockdown, it's like I've seen all the movies, or at least most of the movies. I will say this year, even though they've all been streaming and really accessible, I've had a hard time in general watching quality material and keeping my life together. So like my comfort watching has really been far off the path of what's nominated for the Oscars this year.
Okay, do you think that the pandemic has helped filmmakers like you or others that are not like Warner's or Fox or Paramount to bring their production out there into a market that is not invaded by blockbusters of super millionaire documentaries? So is there more room now because Hollywood is withdrawing a little because of the money thing?
That's a good question, and it's really hard to know. Like this film we finished a year ago, and it's really we were getting ready to release it last April at the Tribeca Film Festival before everything shut down, and so it's really sat on a shelf till now. And so I think I'm kind of experiencing this all in real time. I hope it helps, but I'd be surprised.
And how have you been showing the film already, no?
It opens on Friday. It played at the Doc NYC Film Festival last November, but otherwise it's been under wraps. So
how was that? How was it? Good?
Yeah, I mean, the response was good. It was streaming. It was all, it was everyone, no in-theater viewing, but the response was good and exciting. And, hopefully it'll.
One more question, if you don't mind. What brought you into this artist? Why him?
I was aware of David's work. I think similar to what.
Sorry, you were not even born then, right? I mean.
Oh well, I was a freshman, sophomore in college the year David passed away. Yeah. But I grew up in the middle of Western Pennsylvania, like nowhere.
With the Amish. With the Amish?
Yeah, exactly. No, yeah. Close.
Cool.
Nearby neighbors. Not far away. Well, again, I didn't know much about David before starting this project. I knew some of his work. I knew some of his essays. And for me, the deeper I got, the things that he talked about, again, the One Tribe Nation, the being able to use his work both to kind of figure himself out while also being a piece of resistance and protest in a time that was really important, seemed to reflect what was going on now. The project started summer of July 2017 after the election. So that was very much in my mind. And the further I got into David's work and his life and the things that he had to say, it really felt like he was talking about today.